Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Fire Force Episode 4. So, and to start off, the opening segment of the episode actually introduces us to a character that we weren't supposed to be introduced to until later in the episode, Captain Princess Hibana. Yeah, Princess Hibana, Jesus Christ. But one good thing that pretty much comes from her early introduction is that we get a lot more of a sense of what Obi was talking about last episode, with how there are people within the Fire Force that have their own agenda, and yeah, nothing shows corruption more within a system than a company captain using her subordinates as a chair and walking plank. Yeah. And calling herself princess. Jesus Christ. Although knowing the internet, I'm sure there are plenty who would consider that scene very erotic, which can't deny that there is a very sexy aspect to this. I can't to her introduction. I can't lie. But of course, just crossing out the goofiness of it, just crossing out the goofiness of that scene, as well as her looking up Shinra's Shinra looking up her panties, and getting a little more into the serious aspect of Princess Hibana's introduction. It's basically made clear throughout the episode that Princess Hibana and Company 5 Princess Hibana and Company 5 were just like skulking around and gathering information and whatnot. And this all this that we get with her in the background, and combined it, all this that we get of her in the background, and that leads up to her official introduction, and then leads up to her official introduction, and it's pretty much clear. It's clear as day, just from everything we see with her, that she has definitely been marked as a target of Company 8 at some point. Like, because let's be frank, with her capturing that Infernal, it's clear as day that Company 5 and Princess Hibana has absolutely zero intention of sharing anything. She ain't sharing shit. She is going to keep any information she finds to herself. And again, it's exactly feeding into exactly what Obi said about how each of these Fire Force companies have their own kind of agendas, and this feeds directly into what Fire Force Company 8's whole deal is. And honestly, even without all this setup, just the whole confrontation with Company 8 alone is basically pretty much enough to prove to us that that Princess Hibana has been set as a mark on Company 8's radar for sure. And now, and in terms of the adaptation of the episode itself, it was pretty good, but I can't deny there were some issues. I'm gonna start off small here. Well, the first thing they did is pretty much that they did, for the most part, it was for the most part one of the things that they did kind of do in the beginning, and this one's a bit more of a nitpick, is that they kind of trimmed a little bit of dialogue in the beginning when we pretty much cut to Company 8 and we see Shinra and Obi having that conversation. But that one I can kind of forgive a little more, because it was mostly just stuff that was already covered in the previous episode. So I can understand the whole thing of not wanting to retread. But the more important thing to talk about in this episode, I will say, however, is there were moments throughout the episode where you can clearly tell, and it's obvious, plain as day, that David Productions are in fact in a situation where they're being forced to kind of toe the line in an attempt to avoid any heavy backlash due to the KyoAni Fire. The biggest moment that pretty much proved this to me is that is that during is basically is pretty much during is during the whole is during that pretty much whole basically trial sequence of the firefighter serial killer. They completely cut out on a sequence where he burns where or he pretty much burns some people alive before actually turning into an infernal, and pretty much cut straight to him using fire whips in order to strangle the judge. So yeah, it's clear as day that so yeah, it's pretty obvious that we were going to face a problem like this event. I knew I had a feeling that this would happen. I just didn't think it would happen so soon. And yeah, it's pretty much one of those things where it's one of the things where I'm not gonna pretend it wasn't a jarring change, but I can also see how that in particular would pretty much be in poor taste. The I will say though, I'm hoping we can move past this eventually, because I'm hoping there will be a point where we can hopefully move past this, because otherwise I'm hoping there will be a point where we can move past this, or David Productions ends up finding a little bit of an alternative of some kind, because I'm not gonna if they end up cutting out on very key. If they end up cutting out too much of pretty much people in peril, then it's gonna remove all just urgency from the series. So I hope I understand David Productions is walking on coals with this one, but I hope they can find a way around this almost. Hopefully. Now also on a storytelling level, one thing I really liked about this setup with the court scene and the killer getting off with an insanity plea is that it really shows us that when it comes to the powers that be, everyone who's in control, all the powers that be who the Fire Force companies report to, all those powers that be have become so desperate in order to contain the threat of the infernals and human combustion that they are willing to protect a simple firefighter under any circumstances, even if it means basically falling out of good faith with the public. And truth be told, even taking that aspect out, the whole court case honestly felt way too realistic when you think back, and when you think back on real life, and you see all these news reports of court cases and whatnot. It really just this, and when you look at this court case in general, it really kind of makes you wonder how many people have gotten off with the insanity plea that maybe shouldn't have. I like how it's even taken a step further after he does turn into an infernal, and we see that he was kind of right, how the whole battle between him and Company 8 really was just a battle between two murderers, but where it differs is in the intentions. Like with Fire Force, yes, they pretty much murder people who have turned into infernals, but they pretty much justify it by, they try and justify it the best they can by saying it is to protect people. Arguably that of course even in itself has arguably with that there is obviously a lot of gray area with that kind of with that, but yeah, it's really kind of interesting when it's presented like it is. Now, art and animation was an interesting beast in this episode, because I'd say pretty much around from 70 or 75% of the time, it looked really good, but then there was that 25-30% of the time where it either looked off, or in some cases just very strange choices were made that pretty much caused certain aspects of the episode in order to really stick out, and not in the good way. For instance, that when we pretty much see that scene of Shinra pretty much crouching standing on that car, the CGI that was used in order to create the car really caused a separation for me. And plus that the manga, when that scene was shown in the manga, the pretty much car had this. The car was completely like either burned or pretty much shadowed out to provide the ominous threatening in order to help with the in order to provide a bit more of an ominous threatening feel. But here because it was it was reduced down to just a small shadow on Shinra, but the rest of the car was like, it was clear as day. There was no shadow on it, so it's like there was a bit of a separation there in multiple ways, and not even just the CGI of it. Like you could have added some kind of shadow to that, I think, but yeah. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Mr. Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.